There is a famous song by Led Zeppelin titled A Stairway to Heaven. I wonder if Led was influenced by the misunderstanding of the story of the Tower of Babel when he wrote this popular piece of music. After having the opportunity to see the place and the base of the structure that symbolized sacred space in the ancient world, I am convinced that what we call in English the Tower of Babel was actually an invitation for the pagan gods to visit Earth. Unfortunately, for the poor pagans who lived on the plains in biblical Iraq, the one true God RSVPed came down the stairway for heaven, and the rest is history. I was absolutely floored when I saw that I was going to have an opportunity to visit ancient Babylon that is about 60 miles from Baghdad. But before I take you there, we need to wrap up my visit to the ziggurat at ancient Ur that gives us a glimpse into the purpose of why these ancient stairway structures were built. As I was admiring the Sumerian architecture of this ancient tower, someone might wonder what the connection of this pagan temple is with the story of the Tower of Babel in Genesis chapter 11. In ancient Sumerian culture, the ziggurat was placed in the city as a symbol of the connection between heaven and earth. In fact, the structure was an invitation for the pagan gods to ascend down the stairs from heaven for a meet and greet with the people on earth. What is absolutely astounding is that in Genesis chapter 11, it seems that even though these pagan people had a warped understanding of who the one true God is, he decided to accept their invitation. Here's where the famous statement, "Be careful what you ask for," is on full display. In order to look deeper into this debacle, I wanted to give you one more opportunity to interact with my newfound friends over at Inspiring Philosophy on their in-depth presentation on Genesis 11 and the Tower of Babel. I provided a link in the description for your review. It will answer some of your questions about why I believe Ur has provided a mini model of the foundations of the first Tower of Babel that I encountered in ancient Babylon. Because of my experience in researching, writing, filming, and producing, I decided that I just don't have the time, energy, and resources to do the same thing for this series. Okay, I confess. I'm also getting older, and my body and brain just don't work the same way as when I was producing my one-man, one-camera, one-mission productions. So I've decided that rather than spending months creating engaging productions, I will give some love to those who can help us expedite unpacking biblical Iraq without me starting from scratch. Take a look at a 2-minute presentation by the History Channel that will set the stage for my visit to the site of the Tower of Babel in Babylon. After that, let's crack open my Bible and unpack the passage that caused the confusion about the stairway for heaven.
In central Iraq, 60 miles south of Baghdad, lie the ruins of the ancient city of Babylon, which was once the capital of the Babylonian Empire. At its height in 600 BC, Babylon was estimated to have been the largest city in the world, with a population of more than 200,000 inhabitants. Perhaps the most intriguing ruin that remains in Babylon is the foundation of an ancient crumbled brick tower that was known as the Etemenanke Ziggurat. And there are those who believe that the giant ziggurat may have actually been the Tower of Babel.
The real Tower of Babel, from which the account in the Bible derives, was built by King Nebuchadnezzar II at the beginning of the 6th century BC. If you go to Babylon today, you can easily see on the ground where the ziggurat was, because it is a rectangular ditch with a kind of black square full of mud and oily water, which delineates the entire profile of this great tower, of which nothing else is left. The tower was built made of mud brick. The building was 7 stories, with a little temple at the top. And there was a brick staircase without banisters, so that King Nebuchadnezzar II could mount the staircase and go up and up to the very top. So it was definitely the national monument of the greatest amount of pride.
Historians have estimated that the ziggurat stood nearly 300 feet high, or roughly as tall as the Statue of Liberty. But is it possible that this Babylonian structure was in fact the real Tower of Babel? Perhaps the answer can be found by examining the story that is recorded in the Bible.
I may be slowing down on my one-man, one-camera gig, but when it comes to digging deep within the pages of my Bible, I'm still good to go. So let's take a look at Genesis chapter 11. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. It came about as they journeyed east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. Now my Bible GPS strikes again. This passage matches the historic information about the Sumerians who also traveled east until they made their way between the two rivers of the Tigris and the Euphrates in biblical Iraq. The first question is, where is Shinar? A simple search with my Bible software shows that Shinar is Babylon. See Genesis 10:10, Genesis 14:2 and 4:9, Joshua 7:21, Isaiah 11:11, Zechariah 5:11, and the verse that seals the deal is Daniel chapter 1 verse 2. The Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the vessels of the house of God, and he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels into the treasury of his God. Now, when we cross-reference this verse with Jeremiah chapter 24 verse 1, it confirms in no uncertain terms that Daniel's Shinar is Jeremiah's Babylon. Let's read Jeremiah 24:1. After Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away captive Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and the officials of Judah with the craftsmen and smiths from Jerusalem, and had brought them to Babylon. Let's keep reading from Genesis 11, verse 3. They said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they used bricks for stone, and they used tar for mortar. I actually got to see one of these ancient baked bricks from Babylon. If you look close, you can see the tar or bitumen around the edges that remains as a witness to the ancient brick bakers from Babylon. Now back to the Bible. Verse 4, they said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven." I think two of the reasons for the confusion about the stairway to heaven is the English word tower and the translator's decision to add the words will reach, often italicized, before the word heaven. The Hebrew word behind the English word tower is the word migdal, which can mean stronghold or even fortress without the image of a tall tube-shaped structure that will, quote unquote, will reach into heaven. The ancients actually never thought they could accomplish this mission. Their goal was to send an invitation to heaven. What the verse literally says is, and its head in the heavens, meaning that it had a top that represented what they believed happens in the heavens where their gods dwell. Let's keep reading in Genesis 11. And let us make for ourselves a name. Now here's where things get really interesting by peeking into the Hebrew to see why it is so important to make a name, or Shem in Hebrew. Hint, hint. I would argue that it was not the design of the building that caught the attention of heaven to the invitation from earth, but rather something else the people desired that caused the RSVP. Let's keep reading. Verse 5. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. The stairs on the ancient ziggurat of Ur and the one that stood in Babylon was not primarily for man to ascend to heaven, but rather for the gods to descend to earth. When the one true God of heaven and earth took those stairs down to the meet and greet in Shinar, or better yet, Babylon, some stuff hit the fan. Hopefully you know the rest of the story. If not, open a Bible and read what happened in the rest of Genesis chapter 11, verses 6 through 9. Now for my thoughts about what really caught the attention of heaven. Let's keep reading. Genesis 11, verse 10. These are the records of the generation of Shem. Shem was 100 years old, and became the father of Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. Genesis 11:27. Now these are the records of the generations of Terah. Terah became the father of Abram. Genesis 12:1. Now the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name, or in Hebrew, Shem, great. When reading chapters 11 through 12 of Genesis in Hebrew, the genealogy of Shem, which translates as name, jumps off the page and invites the reader to make the clear connection between man's attempt to build his own name versus God's desire to build Abram's name through the bloodline of Shem, which in Hebrew means name. Did you catch that? In other words, the desire of the brickbakers to make a name, a Shem in Hebrew, caught the attention of heaven to make a visit to earth. The KJV Bible says in Proverbs 11:2, when pride cometh, then cometh shame. And in this case, their shame was to try to make a name, a Shem. Okay, my friends, that's enough of our Bible study. Let's make our way to Shinar, Babel, or should I say Babylon. But on the way, I want to make 2 quick pit stops that will give us a glimpse into how ancient architects of Islam designed minarets that are strikingly similar to artist renditions of what was thought to be the Tower of Babel. The first stop was in Samarra, where the largest mosque in the world existed. It was built in the 9th century and was destroyed in the 12th century, but the minaret was spared. I decided to try and gain access to this place by first taking a trip at the base of the tower to see if I could find a door that would get me to the stairs. When that didn't work, I tried to take the ramp up, but came face to face with barbed wire and Iraqi security detail that didn't look too keen about my attempts to break into the tower. Unfortunately, it was closed due to construction, so I was not able to climb to where the call to prayer used to take place. So I took a picture for you to get an idea on the size of the enormous edifice. This tower is so significant in Iraq's history, it is actually on the back of their money. Not so far away, also in Samarra, I found another ancient minaret that matched the design of the other one. The good news is that this one was open, so I took the opportunity to take a trip up the stairway. On the way up, I started wondering where the idea came from to create these stairways to heaven. The closer I got to the top, it started getting too dangerous with no railing. So I figured I had done just about enough for you to draw your own conclusions on the basis for the design of these ancient Muslim minarets. I finally made my way out of southern Iraq to a spot where I could get a good overview of ancient Babylon. The place where I was standing was perfect to see where the original Tower of Babel was built. For a little backup on the fact that the Tower of Babel was in Babylon, take a look at this reference from the Jewish historian Josephus. He says, the place wherein they built the tower is now called Babylon, because of the confusion of that language which they readily understood before. For the Hebrews mean by the word Babel, confusion, but as to the plain of Shinar, in the country of Babylonia. In the distance lies the square foundation that was discovered by the German archaeologist Robert Koldewey in 1908. The name of the tower was Et Emananki, which means house of the foundation of heaven on earth. Here's a picture of the best attempt by Iraqi archaeologists to create a model of what it looked like. In order to see the foundation up close would require more time, energy, and favor from my guide than I had. So I found something I think you will enjoy from the Smithsonian Institute that will let me focus on something that is a bit more my speed these days.
The Tower of Babel, the subject of one of the strangest stories in the Bible. But could it be based on truth?
I thought as a kid this was folklore or legend, and that a lot of people still think of it in biblical terms as some kind of legend, but they don't really know that it actually existed. I'm really at the place where the tower stood.
The fragile remains of the legendary city of Babylon in modern-day Iraq have revealed many secrets. The greatest of all was the discovery of a vast structure that ancient records suggest was the Tower of Babel. Ancient texts have allowed experts to imagine what the building might have looked like. But now, astounding new evidence has emerged. Inscribed on the surface of a privately owned tablet is an image that sensationally reveals exactly what the Tower of Babel looked like.
This is a very strong piece of evidence that the Tower of Babel story in the Bible was inspired by this real building.
This remarkable tablet, which has never been filmed before, dates to the 6th century BC. It was discovered in Babylon over a century ago. Unbelievably, no one realized how important it was until Professor Andrew George, an expert in ancient texts, brought its faint carvings back to life.
At the top here, this part, there is a relief depicting a stepped tower, and here a figure of a human being carrying a staff with a conical hat on. Below that relief is text which has been chiseled into the monument, and the label is easily read. It reads Etem Enki Zikurat Babeli, and that means the zikkurat or temple tower of the city of Babylon.
This tablet provides the first ever image of the real Tower of Babel. It confirms the building was a Mesopotamian stepped tower and illustrates the 7 tiers of the ancient megastructure. Significantly, it also clearly identifies the man behind it, Mesopotamia's most famous ruler, King Nebuchadnezzar II.
The building and its builder on the same relief.
But while the images are extraordinary, the tablet's ancient text also reveals a detailed account of the tower's construction, and more importantly, how Nebuchadnezzar went about building it.
It reads from the upper sea, which is the Mediterranean, to the lower sea, and that's the Persian Gulf. The far-flung lands and teeming people of the habitations are mobilized in order to construct this building of the Zikkurat of Babylon.
Incredibly, this ancient account is identical to the biblical story of how the Tower of Babel was constructed. For scholars, the tablet offers further proof that the Tower of Babel wasn't just a work of fiction. It was an actual building from antiquity.
There's another reason I decided not to spend the time on the long trek to the base of the Tower of Babel, and that is that I was standing right next to a palace overlooking the Tigris River that Saddam Hussein built. It has since been vacated, but he built it to challenge biblical prophecy. I finagled a key to unlock a door inside the palace that changed the game on busting borders. What I saw inside was well worth the effort to get in. Unfortunately, or fortunately, this content is way too hot to handle for the public. So by now you know how to access the Plus episode I am titling Saddam Hussein versus the Babylon Prophecies. It is available exclusively at the Bible Beyond Borders page at bfainternational.com. Okay, my budding biblical Iraq buddies, it is time to buckle our seatbelts for a ride through the ruins of ancient Babylon in the next Biblical Iraq Unpacked episode titled Fallen Babylon. You can catch it most anywhere Biblical Foundations Academy has put down our stake, including BFA YouTube channel, BFA Facebook page, and on our Bible Beyond Borders section at bfainternational.com. We also uploaded the episode to our BFA Flix free app that you can download on your Apple or Android device. And not to mention, but I will, we uploaded audio-only episodes on 16 podcast platforms under Biblical Foundations Academy International Podcast with yours truly, Keith Johnson. So what are you waiting for? Oh, be sure to like, comment, and share if you dare so that we can keep unpacking Biblical Iraq.